Welcome to the Macros for Life podcast, where we talk all things macros, business, and marriage. We're your hosts, Eve and Randall Guzman. Visit our website at www.gtransformationacademy.com, where you can download our free How to Track Macros guide. This guide has helped over 15,000 people start their macro tracking journey.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the Macros for Life podcast. I'm excited to share with you guys a guest that we have today. Her name is Jenn Watts, and we're going to be talking about working with fitness and nutrition clients who have ADHD and also her personal story. Jenn is certified as a PN1 coach, also has a cert from NASM-CNC, Advanced Weight Loss Certified Coaching, and is working on her macro coaching certification. Hey, how are you today?
Hi, Eve. I'm really good, really good. Happy to be here.
Yes, I'm excited to talk about this today. I actually came across this niche topic when I was doing a one-on-one call with Jenn, and I'm like, other people need to hear more about this, because for me, I definitely know about the topic, but I wasn't always being exposed to like literature and podcasts and other people's accounts on social media. And I'm like, why aren't people talking about the struggle of weight loss with ADHD? And you pretty much gave me a lot more awareness. And I'm definitely interested in our conversation today so that I can learn more, and so can our audience.
Oh, I'm so glad to hear you say that, because that's exactly what I want, is just the awareness. Like, it's crazy how connected they are. Like, there's so many more people. We're like overrepresented in people that are struggling with their weight as compared to how many people actually have ADHD. It's, I don't know, we don't know the statistics exactly, like 3 to 5% of the population, but then it tends to be more like 30% or higher, like with people struggling with their weight who have ADHD or present with those symptoms. So yeah, there's definitely a connection.
That's crazy. Definitely crazy. So tell us about yourself and what you're currently doing, and we'll dive into your background.
Yeah, so me, I excuse me, I have cold. In terms of my history, I started struggling with my weight when I was about 13 or 14. And it kind of went up and down basically my whole life from that point. And I was also at that time diagnosed with anxiety and depression, which it turns out is very common for people who have ADHD, but I didn't know at the time. I just felt like everything I did didn't work. I couldn't stick with it. I couldn't find a program that fit for me. I would go hard on something and then just like lose interest and stop. It would go up and down, and then I had kids and it got to be a real struggle for me. But in terms of the ADHD, that only really came about because my son was diagnosed. So my son, who's now 11, when he was, I think he was like about 7 years old, he was really struggling with a lot of different things, anxiety, having trouble at school. And his teachers were the ones who were like, you need to get him assessed. And I had no idea about any of this stuff. And sure enough, so he was assessed and they said he has anxiety, ADHD, and all this kind of stuff. And so then we took a deep dive in learning about it. But I still at that point didn't even consider it for myself, even though it's genetic and the likelihood of a parent having it if a kid is diagnosed is really high. So yeah, it wasn't for a couple of years until I realized like a lot of these things actually happen to me. It's just different than it is in a little boy, in a woman. And so I finally sought out a diagnosis, which wasn't super easy, but I did finally get it. And it was only like earlier this year that I was finally diagnosed. But that was a huge moment for me, realizing the connection between the way that this presents in me and the struggles that I had had with my weight. And it was just presented so much clarity to me of why I just couldn't make it work.
Yeah. Now, for me, where I'm sitting, I know that you don't work as a CPA now.
No.
For everybody, the public and things like that. But I'm also like, man, how did you do that?
I know. Yeah. So I'm a CPA, and I only haven't been practicing for a couple of years now. My husband's also a CPA, and we had our own practice back where we lived before. And I just when all this stuff happened with my son and then COVID and everything, I feel like I had like a midlife crisis. And we ended up selling our business and moving and all of this stuff. But yeah, it was a struggle. Like I look back and I'm like, how on earth did I make it through that? My articling and getting my designation. There's a lot of like studying at the last minute and cramming, and then the next day being like, I don't remember any of this.
Anything, but I made it.
No. Yeah, I made it. And that fuels the imposter syndrome too, because you're like, I'm designated, but I feel like I shouldn't be here. Like, yeah. So it wasn't easy for sure. But yeah, I got really burnt out with that really quite easily. So yeah, I'm happy to not be in there anymore.
You made it, but
I made
now
it.
it's a choice. And now you're helping people in a different way.
Yeah, for sure. And that is like, I'm so passionate about it, especially like having made that connection myself. I'm just like, I want to scream it from the rooftops, especially to a lot of women like me who don't understand, and they just think like, why can't I get this? Why can't I make it work? And I just want them to know, like, it makes sense why you're struggling with this, and you can absolutely figure out ways to make it work.
Yep, absolutely. So can you talk a little bit about how ADHD presents? Like, what are some of the symptoms like for some people that are like, oh, I've heard about this for like 20 years, but I really sat down to really know more than what the letters spell out to be.
Yeah, for sure. And I think that's one of the sort of issues with it, is that a lot of people that do know anything about it, they think of, you know, a little boy that can't sit in his seat and he's bouncing off the walls and, you know, going a mile a minute. But that is just like one component of it. And that's sort of the more researched area of it. It's very different in adults, and it's especially different in women. And so there's the standard things like impulsivity, emotional regulation, restlessness, zoning out. Like one of the things that is pretty common is like the ability to hyper focus and zone in on things that you actually care about, but just like totally can't pay attention or care about things that you don't. So and then not being able to follow through on instructions, losing focus on things, and emotional dysregulation. Yeah, I already mentioned that, but that's a big one. There's sleep struggles. There's something called RSD, like rejection sensitivity dysphoria, which like they think about almost 100% of people with ADHD have that. And that is a lot of just like fear of perceived rejection and how that can impact people, which is, I mean, we'll talk about that later, but that plays a big part in it as well for a lot of women. And then like things like sleep difficulties, and then sensory issues like getting sensory overload really easily. So yeah, there's such a variety of symptoms, and everybody presents differently, but a lot of those are things that people wouldn't think about. And sometimes they'll read this stuff and be like, oh my gosh, that sounds like me. But they haven't even considered it. So
and the areas of like hyper focusing, can that also lead to like impulsive behaviors when it's about something you want, you like, you love?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And like the fact that like people with ADHD have their neurotransmitters are a little different. So we have less dopamine, we have less GABA, like all these things, but that can really lead to like you're trying to compensate for those things by behaviors like impulsivity. So you seek out food, you know, you might want food to make you feel better, or alcohol, or all sorts of things that people might do to try to compensate for that. But that for sure is, zoning in on those things happens a lot.
And we may get into this a little bit more, but with ADHD and thinking about like the different types of like neurotransmitters or deficiencies, can that also lead to, when it comes to like dieting, picking quick fixes? Because they want that, like, give it to me now.
Yeah, that's a big thing with dopamine, is that there is a natural tendency to crave and desire things like sugar and carbs a lot more than a neurotypical person might. And that's something that easily can like, satisfy that need too. So you have like that, your brain is already deficient in this and you naturally crave it more. And that's something that you can seek out to try to make yourself feel a little more elevated and better. For sure.
Yeah, I know times when I feel like that. Like if I
Yeah.
get a cookie, I know I'll feel better.
And then you tie that in with the fact that we are all, that's the like one of the best ways that I've heard it put, and I can never remember which doctor said this, but for the ADHD brain, it's like we don't have a good sense of time. There's now and not now. And so when you think, okay, this cookie's going to make me feel better, you're not going to think like, hey, let me think about this because that doesn't really factor in with my goals and I might regret this tomorrow. You're not thinking about any of that stuff. You're thinking, feel better now. So yeah, so it's a little bit more of a challenge with that type of stuff.
Yeah, definitely. I can see that. Yep.
Yeah.
So when you were discovering the fact that you had ADHD, how were you, or how did you become aware of like, I've got to go about a different way for my health and fitness goals?
Yeah, I think, well, the first thing was just a recognition of like times that I had tried to work with coaches in particular. I didn't have there's a lot of perfectionism that happens with ADHD.
Yes.
And so there's a lot of, I'm going to do all of this all at once and I'm going to do it perfect and I'm going to be like the best client ever. And then you go hard and you burn out really quickly. And so recognizing that pattern in myself and thinking, okay, this totally makes sense. Like I can't just go hard and expect to see results. And there was a lot of shame in that. Like there's a lot of shame in being like, I'm a smart person. Why can't I get it together when it comes to this? So I think the biggest thing for me was just recognizing that the way that I had been going about it was never going to work. And so I just had to take a different approach. Yeah. And then I'm trying to think of examples for myself. So the rejection sensitivity dysphoria was a big part of it too. Like it's hard to go out and try new things. It's hard to like we have a messed up self-concept. So the way we perceive ourselves is often like very different than the way other people perceive us. And so I mean, I think about it in terms of my job, which is, sorry, this is like a long winding story about this, but I have ADHD. This is how it goes. So when I think back to my job, and this is very common for people, like I always thought I'm going to get fired. Like every day I'd go to work and be like, I'm going to get fired. This is the day they're going to realize I don't know what I'm doing and I'm going to get fired.
So
And
like anxiety plus imposter syndrome plus everything.
Yes. And so then you have this internalized all the time, you're going hard, and then you're just so burnt out by the end of the day. And that kind of stuff takes a toll on you, like the mental energy of dealing with all of this. And so I realized that I was going to have to tackle that kind of stuff and change the way I thought about myself and my abilities before I was going to be able to, put myself into trying to reach my goals when it came to my weight. So like mindfulness is a big part of it. And I laugh because like people with ADHD are like, what? I can't do that. But there are ways to try to manage that and start working on your mind and the way that you think about things, because you're going to have to change the way that you think about yourself in order to be able to make changes and grow in that area.
What were some of the biggest changes that you made when selecting or even creating, if you created your own nutrition and fitness plan? What became like the new criteria?
Yeah. So I had to, excuse me. I had to go slow and steady. And that was really hard because you want to throw yourself into it and be like, I'm going to go hard and go well. But I had to like slow down and just be like, okay, I'm going to layer in things one at a time. I'm going to start with water. I'm going to make sure I'm drinking enough water, and that's enough, and resist the urge to be like, no, I need to do more than this. and focusing on that. And once that's set in, then you can layer in something else and then layer in something else and really focus on not expecting perfection from yourself. Like, you know, if you can hit 80% of the time, that's great. And that's a really hard thing to accept, but that's the only way that you're going to be successful with that. And time management is obviously an issue. Organization is an issue. And so really being aware that, okay, I'm not going to be able to do this unless I plan ahead, which is not a natural thing for us to do. And so that has been the biggest shift for me, is taking the time, you know, on a Sunday, for instance. This is just what works for me, but everybody's different. But taking the time on a Sunday to be like, okay, what can I do this week to make sure I have enough protein available for my meals this week? Or what can I do to make sure I'm going to be able to exercise or get enough sleep, because that's such a huge part of it. And so going against your natural instinct and planning ahead and sticking with that has made a huge difference.
And do you
Yeah.
tend to put that on repeat? The thing, like when you get your method, if it ends up on repeat, I'm assuming it's going to end up being faster. Like you're going to get faster over time.
Yeah, absolutely. And it, like, because it can and it ends up being habitual. And so now that I have that routine down pack, it's like, it's amazing what a difference that has made. And another thing was just having grace with myself too, because one thing that I found really interesting was when I started to do research about, I mean, I'm an accountant. I love numbers. I love data. I love to do this kind of stuff. And so I dove deep. But everything that came up with regards to eating with ADHD would say you should just do intuitive eating. And I knew from my own research, I was like, wait a minute, like we don't have like the proper hunger hormone, like receptor thing going on. Like I have no awareness to recognize when I'm hungry and no awareness to recognize when I'm full. So to just tell somebody with ADHD to just go eat intuitively is like trying to teach a kid to swim by just like throwing the baby in the water and be like, okay, swim now. Like we don't know how to do that right off the bat. And so I was like, I'm again, another case of going against the grain. Like I have to accept that I need to learn how to do these things. And it's okay to track your food. It's okay to figure out what my body needs so that I can start to learn how to recognize that and make it work for me. Because yeah, I mean, when you're being told that that's the only way to do it, it can be really tough to feel like, you know, okay to do it the other way. That's why I love Ashley Pardo's with her intuitive macros. But yeah, like that to me was like a big obstacle, was overcoming that thing of thinking like this is the only way that I can do it, because I knew that that wasn't going to work for me. Yeah.
And then, not to be whatever, because I'll get some things about intuitive eaters, which most of the time, and if people have heard those podcasts that I've done at least one with my friend, Ashley Pardo, that you mentioned, Pardo, in case you guys are looking for her. I do intuitive eat, but most of us, to kind of get the goal that we need to track first and then move to intuitive eating. So when you mentioned to me that like one of the diets that is, or styles of eating that is recommended to people with ADHD is intuitive eating, and I was just like, what?
Yeah.
Because it's not always natural for everyone. And Ashley talks about this a lot too. For those that have more of a sensitive body type, which is mine, I have to, and we're gonna have a podcast on this. I have to, you know, eat in a more healthy way. I have to be more mindful about my food choices. I have to move my body X amount of times per week and strength train. I have a sensitive body. I can't always just eat whatever I want and not have the health and the physique that I want. I have to work harder. And if you are someone with ADHD and has a more sensitive body type, you could get really frustrated in doing intuitive eating. And yeah, you're eating whatever, but you may not be content in how you're feeling in your body, your blood pressure, your blood glucose, your gut health. It's not going to always work.
No. And it's a great end goal. Like, it would be amazing to ultimately get there, but
Mhm,
we don't have the tools to start out there, and to just that can create a lot of shame and
mhm,
frustration too for people to just say like, "Okay, well just follow your cues," when they just don't have that capability. And also a lot of us, like I mean, I don't want to assume that every woman in this situation is like me, but I'm guessing that a lot of women or people assigned female at birth who have gone through this have done a lot of different diets, and their weights have probably gone up and down, and they're not in tune with their body cues.
mhm,
And so it is okay to try to learn what your body needs and follow some kind of rhythm or plan and track it first, just so you can learn those things and then eventually be able to be a little bit more intuitive with it.
mhm. Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, I'm biased. I love macros.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a great place to learn portions and like you said, how do you actually feel? You know,
Mhm.
some people get really repulsed of moderate protein, high protein. I mean, sometimes people think someone's eating the whole cow. We're not.
Yeah.
We're just more protein focused, but how do you
Mhm.
not know you won't feel better with more protein until you have a goal and track it? I for
Yeah.
years thought, oh, I'm eating enough. Like, why am I not looking like I want? And I was so low in protein. And now when I don't get it, I feel the same way that I feel when my carbs are low. I'm like, I need protein. Like, I need that today. And
Mhm.
I do more intuitive eating than tracking. And that's the only way I got here. And now I'm, super grateful.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think a lot of people with ADHD aren't aware of the impact that that can have on them. Protein, especially, like you mentioned,
Mhm,
that's one of the things when they talk about ways to help regulate your dopamine deficiencies.
mhm,
Making sure that you get protein, get enough protein is one of the best ways to work with that. Never mind if you're somebody who's trying to work on your body composition. So, irregardless, like focusing on getting enough protein is hugely beneficial for people. And if you're just naturally, I don't know, I don't know about everybody else, but I know I don't gravitate towards protein rich foods. Like I'm if I could just eat, carbs all day, I would. And so, yeah, being intentional about protein in particular is so beneficial.
mhm.
Yeah.
Cool. So we know intuitive eating is not, not the go-to.
It's a good end goal. It's a good end
Yeah.
goal, but it is not a starting place for somebody with ADHD, especially somebody who wants to make changes with their body
What
composition.
about anything that's like, how do people with ADHD do with like the cookie cutter style diets where you and your friend and your mom, you've all got the same kind of plan?
Mm,
How do those
yeah.
go?
That's a big no for me. I think, like, it is so important for people with ADHD to have something that is tailored to them. One of the things that I think this is a way that people can really, work on this self-concept thing and work on their ability to reach their goals and stick with something is to focus on their strengths. And so if you're gonna build out a plan that's, geared towards the ways that you know you do well, that you're interested in, you're going to have so much more success. Like if you're, I mean, I don't know, if you're somebody who loves to cook, then you can come up with a way to eat that satisfies the way that you like to cook. If you don't like to cook and you're trying to do some cookie cutter plan that involves making a bunch of meals, you are going to fail. I mean, that's for
Mhm.
anybody, but
Yeah.
especially for somebody with ADHD. And just the rhythm of your life, like you have to stick with that. And so, um, you know, finding something that works in with your schedule. But yeah, the biggest thing, like I said, is focusing in on where your strengths lie and not trying to make yourself do things that you are not naturally interested in and you are not naturally good at. So,
Mhm.
um, yeah, I mean, it's hard to think of an example of that, but it's just so important to tailor it to the way that everybody's brain kind of operates.
Yep. Yeah, and I would definitely probably extend to say that you would agree the same for picking a coach that
Huh?
can play up the things that you're excited about, things that you master, the things that maybe you get a little hyper focused on, but like
Yeah.
there's motivation in that. But like a coach that isn't just cookie cutter, they can
Yes.
not a coach that's going to go, no, we don't do that here. Instead,
Yeah.
like tell me more. Why do you like doing that? Why
Mhm.
is that your favorite activity for exercise? Why are you so crazy about this food? Why am I seeing it logged every single day?
Yeah, and that by the way, that's another thing that people with ADHD do is that they'll get so into something and do it all the time for, a few weeks or something like that, and then they're not, we're like toddlers in that way. We like zone in on the same food, we're gonna eat it all the time for like 3 weeks, and then we don't wanna touch it again.
Mhm.
So, yes, but like you said, with the coach, that is so hugely important. You have to connect with that person, and they also have to be receptive to the way that you do things. I don't know if everybody wants to volunteer that they have ADHD to their coach. Most of people in my experience are fine telling people that
Mhm.
they
Yeah,
have ADHD. But a coach, like coming from the other side of it too, a coach being sensitive and understanding to that is going to make such a big difference, because you probably worked with people with ADHD. Maybe a coach wouldn't know it, but if you have somebody typically who is perfectionist about this, they try to do everything right, and then all of a sudden they ghost you
mhm.
or something like that. Um, yeah, the coach being receptive to that is going to make a big difference to them as well in terms of like seeing results with their clients. But yeah, it is so important to work with somebody who is going to understand and appreciate
Mhm.
those differences in you.
Yeah, I could definitely say for myself and like most of the coaches in the macro mentorship community, they would love to know, because
Mhm.
they know that they can make the customizations and things that someone wants, because I mean we're all about making them custom and listening, because if you don't know what that person needs, the plan isn't going to work.
Yeah.
So I'm definitely hoping that other coaches would be open to know, and I don't ever mind hearing. I don't ever feel like, oh, and I'm
Yeah.
like, a lot of us have at least a day, a week where we're probably having some, we might be having some like ADHD characteristics. I would love,
Yeah.
so that I'm like, wait a minute, why are they so fixated on this one thing? But the other things don't matter at all. I mean, it makes a lot of sense.
Mhm. And even little things like they disappear for a few days, and
Mhm.
then, they might have shame about it or feel embarrassed and not want to reconnect, to say like, "Hey, I totally got off track, but I'm still here." Having that kind of a relationship with your clients can make a big difference, especially when they have that rejection sensitivity. So, if they feel like, "Oh, my coach is going to be mad at me. I can't, be honest with them about this." And then you're wondering why, like, why is this person not doing what they said they're going to do? But it just like open lines of communication can make a big difference. And that's the other thing too, is that like people with ADHD are not looking for like accommodations or to be treated much differently, or we need hand holding or anything like that. We're not weak. We want to succeed just as much as everybody else, but we just need to find a way to work with the ways that we operate differently so that we can see the success. Like, we're not looking for like, the easy route or to just be like treated differently. It's just we really want to succeed, but we have to accept the way that we operate.
Definitely. Can you
Yeah.
speak more about, you mentioned like body awareness and
Mhm.
struggles that people with ADHD might have? And if coaches are listening, what should they know about like body awareness?
Yeah, so that body awareness and like, so it's called proprioception. So it's just that connection between your mind, your brain, and your physical body. So this is noticing when you're actually hungry, noticing when you've eaten enough, noticing when you're thirsty. It can even extend to things like cold and hot and pain, like all of those types of things in your body. But for people with ADHD, those receptors, those hormones even are not functioning at the same level as somebody who is neurotypical or non-ADHD. So, like this will often play out in people with ADHD getting hyper focused on something. They're deep in their work, and then all of a sudden it's like, oh, it's 2 o'clock and I haven't eaten yet. And then they'll, go and just eat whatever's available because they're
Mhm.
ravenous and they just need to satisfy that and get rid of that hunger feeling so they can get back to what they were doing. So, yeah, so we just don't have those natural cues. And we also will try to work with that dopamine deficiency. A lot of people go to food for that. And that's whether they're bored, they're looking for stimulation. Like we often need it's just something to do with your hands. Like people fidget and so and that type of stuff. And so it might be a specific thing like the crunch of chips or something like that, which like vegetables is not gonna have crunchy celery instead. No, that's not gonna work. And so yeah, so that body awareness part of it is a really big thing to pay attention to. And just for ADHD people to have the awareness that they have that deficiency, because a lot of people don't. And so just knowing that that's the way it is, so you can be a little bit more focused on eating when you need to. So it's okay to eat by the clock at first, because you otherwise don't know how to train your body kind of to satisfy it when it needs the food. So maybe you're never hungry when you wake up, and so you get on with your day and then you don't eat until it's too late. It's okay to say, okay, you know what? I think tomorrow I'm going to set a timer, and at 9 a.m. I'm going to eat my breakfast, because I know that that's probably when my body needs the fuel, and then I know that protein and fiber or whatever is going to get me going on better with my day. So
yeah, meal timing and then having something available to eat.
yes. Yeah.
Something that's kind of on the plan to eat.
Exactly. And that especially, I mean, we all know this too, like with protein, especially for breakfast and lunch, like you need to make sure you have that stuff available. You're not going to just like wander into your kitchen and find some kind of protein available to you, especially if you're somebody who's, left it too long and you're hungry. So but yeah, that's where that planning ahead comes in, and you need to have those protein sources ready to go.
Can you speak to impulsivity and being on a nutrition plan or a nutrition goal regimen, whether deficit or maintenance?
Yeah.
What kinds of things do people with ADHD need to be mindful of? What should coaches know about impulsivity?
Well, I mean, it's kind of the same thing of just mindlessly gravitating towards grabbing food to satisfy those desires. And so again, it comes back to awareness. Like they often think, people with ADHD just think like, well, I don't like routine. I don't like those kind of things, but we actually thrive on that. We're kind of like teenagers where we're like, don't tell me what to do, but also like, please help me. So with the impulsivity, like having a plan ahead of time is so crucial. And even just knowing that you're going to want, like trying to get ahead of the game and know that I'm going to have this desire to just grab things. Grabbing food is a big problem for a lot of us. And even a desire to rebel against your own plans is super common. But if you know ahead of time that these are the types of things that you do, or a coach knows ahead of time to say, hey, I know like you've done this before, or you might have a desire to like go off track or have these kind of things. So what are we going to do to prepare ahead of time? Or what are some of the things that we might have on hand if you feel that urge, or you just want to say like, F it, just do something else? Like try to game it and plan ahead of time. Like what are some things that are maybe like a little bit safer of a choice for you that would still satisfy that impulsive desire?
Got it. Yeah. That sounds like me. That's why I've had to learn. I had to be very mindful of like, okay, what's the middle ground of satisfies me, but I'm not going to eat the whole bag.
I found like for me, especially with having young kids, like it's you're not even aware so much of the time that you're putting stuff in your mouth. Like I don't even want to know like what percentage of the calories that I was consuming before on a day-to-day basis were just leftover scraps from the kids' plates. And like who even really wants that? But you just do it. You just do it, right?
Yeah.
And so like that was a tough thing for me to recognize that I was doing that, but also you're not just going to immediately stop, and that's okay. Like if you have that awareness and you start to recognize that you're doing it, eventually you're going to be able to work on that and lessen the times that it's happening and plan ahead for it. So that's one thing I would say is to people with ADHD, as well as coaches working with them, is just to have grace around that. Like
Mm-hmm.
Just, it's going to take time to recognize these areas that you're being impulsive, so that you can start to like lessen the occurrences.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I just thought about like the eating off of kids' plates. I know definitely for me, I used to do that when kids were younger, regardless of what's going on with me. And it was just, I mean, when you said it, I was like, how many chicken nuggets and like hot
Mhm.
dogs have I like sliced up hot dogs?
Oh yeah, yeah, me
I mean,
too.
my
Like,
kids are older. Hot dogs were more normal back then. I know there's
yeah,
all these no-nos about hot dogs, so you guys
oh
don't come
gosh.
for me about hot dogs
My
today.
my kids just had actually no, listen. My son had hot dogs last week and my daughters just ate hot dog buns with ketchup. Okay? So no judgment here.
Hey,
They don't like the wieners. So whatever.
they ate, right? They're still
Yeah,
alive.
exactly.
Look, from one nutrition coast to another, they're alive. They're
They're
eating.
alive, they're
There's
fed.
nutrients.
Yeah.
Ah. The other thing I was thinking about is with people that have ADHD, can they have a tendency to like get excited about a program? And I'm really specifically thinking about Black Friday was not too long ago.
Yep.
Everything was on sale.
Mhm.
Everybody had a nutrition program on sale, whether it was a course, a group, gym memberships, fitness apps. Do or can people have ADHD have a tendency to like, oh my gosh, I'm going to do that? And if they're
Mhm.
grabbing programs that don't have accountability, is there a tendency to buy and sign up for lots of nutrition fitness programs that just go to live and die on your computer, an app on your phone? Is the accountability thing a big need?
Feel like I'm being called out. I can't even tell you how many of those programs have died on my computer. Yeah, and even still, like, as a coach myself and I, working with people, I still see those and I'm like, "Ooh, that sounds good." Like,
Mhm,
what's that
yeah.
doing? But yeah, absolutely. Like, it I can't tell you how many times I've signed up for something, "This sounds amazing," and then, like, maybe I get through a little bit of it and then
Mhm,
done. If you don't have that accountability, like, it is, yeah, it's really unlikely to happen, especially if it's cookie cutter like we talked about. But there's for sure and that's the impulsivity as well, like the tendency to just like grab onto anything, shiny object, and think that, oh, this is going to be the answer for me.
yeah.
And it just dies and you never participate in it. Or even another thing is like buying multiple things and thinking that
Mhm,
you're somehow going to do both like more than one thing at
same
the same
time.
time, experience that overwhelm and just shut it all off and you're done. You're like, what
Mhm,
was I thinking? I'm not doing any of this. And
mhm.
then feeling bad about it and then beating yourself up. So there, yeah, that is a big cycle that we will go through. But yeah, the accountability is a really big part of what is going to lead people with ADHD to success. I mean, I'm not saying I think everybody should have a coach, but I know it's not accessible to everybody. So
Right.
even if it's something like, do you have a buddy or a family member or a
Mhm,
coworker or somebody that you can check in with? Because having that accountability makes such a big difference to finding a way to follow through with these things, and
mhm,
even accountability to yourself. Like if you're not tracking, find some way to have a food journal, like, or even just take pictures of your food and assess it. Take 30 seconds, a minute at the end of the day to assess it and be accountable to yourself to say like, okay, this is what I did. I wonder if this is meeting my, helping me along my path towards my goals or not. But for sure, accountability, especially in a coach, is just so like gonna give you such a better chance at reaching your goals because it's easy to just lose track, lose interest, and be hard on yourself that you're not doing enough or not doing it right. So having somebody to mirror back to you all the work that you're actually doing and the progress that you're actually making, especially in times when it feels like
mhm.
I'm slogging away at this and I'm not seeing any results, it's really easy to give up. And so a coach could be an incredible resource for that type of thing.
Yeah, I mean, that's honestly the number one reason to sign up for coaching, whether it's a group, even if it's like a community app
Yep.
or one-on-one, because if anybody's listening that's the age 30 and older,
Mhm.
you've either tried enough diets, you've read about them, you've seen your friends, your mom, your dad, your coworkers do them. All of us know how to get to a desired result. We know we might have to eat a little less. We might have to add fruits and vegetables, cut out some alcohol, bump up protein, move more, rest more. We all know what to do. A coach just can like customize it, make it personal, make so like the guesswork comes out. But we typically know what to do. It's just, are we doing the thing? So coaching, to me, the biggest component is the accountability.
Absolutely. And another little part of that with regards to the accountability for somebody with ADHD is we've spent a lot of our lives sort of masked and pretending to be more like in line with the rest of society. And so if you can find yourself a coach that you don't feel is judging you, that you feel you can just be your authentic self around, that is going to make a huge difference too in being able to stick with it and see success and just be honest. Because for a coach too, like if your client doesn't feel like they can be honest with you, it's just not going to work and they're not going to see success. So yeah, that's a big part of it for people with ADHD too, is just know that they are safe to just sort of be themselves and that they're not going to be judged. That's really going to help them see success.
Cool.
Yeah.
Is there anything else about ADHD and nutrition and fitness that we should know today?
I think we've covered most of it. Just awareness and acceptance on the part of the person as well as the coach, that we have these sort of, I hate to call it deficiencies, but they're just differences in the way that our brain works. And so all of this executive function stuff like time management, organization, all of the things that contribute to you being successful on a sort of journey like this, we struggle with those things. And that doesn't mean that you're done. You just can't see success with this. Absolutely not. But I think you need to be aware of it and find ways in a personalized way that you can work with the way that you operate to be able to come up with a plan that's going to lead you to success. So I feel so much, I'm so compassionate and empathetic, obviously, as a person myself, to people with ADHD who struggle with this and have not made that connection and don't have the awareness. So I just want to let everybody know there's nothing wrong with you. This is so normal for you that you operate this way, and you can absolutely put the pieces together in a way that works for you and see success in this area. You're not destined to stay the way that you are by any means, but you can absolutely do it.
I totally agree.
Yeah.
So where can everyone find you? Do you have any freebies? And tell them about your new podcast.
Oh yes, so I do. I just launched my podcast. It's called Losing Weight with ADHD. Tried to keep it simple. So that's on all the podcast platforms. And I'm on Instagram. It's at jenniferwatts.ca. I know you're probably thinking, I know Eve is thinking I need to change that name. And I do. I'll come up with something else. But yeah, I'm on there, and I do have a freebie. If you go onto my Instagram, you can go up to my the link in the bio or whatever, and you can book a chat with me. You can grab my freebie, all that stuff. And there's a link to my podcast there if you want it.
We'll link it. We'll make
sure you
have. You're like, if they want it, we're going to link it.
Yeah. And I'm going to be starting up with more one-on-one coaching, probably starting in January too, if anybody's interested in that. I would eventually like to do group coaching, because I think for people with ADHD, group coaching would be amazing. Yeah. Amazing. And so I'm working on it. I'm going to make it happen.
Hey, it's recorded now, so you have to.
Yes.
I know where to find you. I know where to find you. Well, thank you so much for sharing today. Like, this is just so wonderful for people that are needing to really find information on this specific topic versus feeling like I'm alone. You have such great resources and posts and content on your page. And I'm really glad that you were here today to really just give a lot of information that a lot of people don't know. I feel like this is a great starting point for other coaches to learn and listen about, and then tune in more definitely on your new podcast. So
yes, thank you so much for having me, Eve.
Yep, no problem. We will catch you guys on the next episode.
Thanks for listening to our podcast today. Make sure you like, share, and tag us on Instagram. Also, subscribe to our channel so you don't miss future episodes. In the meantime, be healthy and get wealthy.